Hello, everybody, and welcome. And we're going to introduce two drams from the current outturn. My name is Olaf, and I'm one of the ambassadors of the Scotchmore Whisky Society. And my colleague on the other side.
I'm Les Harrow, for those who haven't come across me before. I'm based down in Harrogate, so a little bit away from Olaf. In fact, Olaf, the last time we saw each other in this situation, we were doing the Korean tasting,
Yes.
which seems such a long time ago now.
Yeah.
But now we've got spring outside and the flowers, so a different season altogether. But yeah, it seems such a long time ago since we were doing something like this together.
It certainly does. And did we think we're still going to be sitting here 5-6 months later and still doing it?
Please, no chance.
Well, I think we're both getting grayer and the hair's getting longer as well. So
yeah.
No, so we've got two whiskies we're going to introduce. One being the 28.52, which is going to be the first one we're going to try, and the second one is the 46.105. So what I'll do is I'll talk through the first one, and Les is going to take number two. But obviously, we'll just sort of interact and chat. And if anyone who's out there wants to take part, just put a few comments on, and we'll take it from there. So the first distillery, 28. That's a distillery which has a very proud date on its sort of all around it, 1488. But that was not when the distillery was built in 1488. That was when the brewery was built. And that's when the brewery started. And there's lots and lots of distilleries which started life as a brewery before they moved on to becoming a distillery. Because as you know, you have to have a good ale to produce a good whiskey. And you also need good water to produce a good ale and a good whiskey. And that's why this distillery actually comes from a place which I think most of you would know, because it comes from an area where water comes from, which is called Highlands Spring. And that's sent all over the world. And that's where that distillery is based. It's the distillery came later. Well, sometimes distilleries come 10, 15, 20 years later. This distillery came actually at 461 years later to the brewery. It came on stream in 1949, and the main reason why it came on stream was because they needed whiskey for the blend Highland Queen, which then wasn't a well-known name, but they were building it up, and it had its heydays in the 1960s and 1970s. I actually got a very, very interesting book from Mr. McGregor, who actually, his son is a regular at the Inverness tasting, and he written a book after 50 years of service for Highland Queen, and that's this book here, fascinating because it's so entwined with Glenmorangie as well, MacDonald and Muir. That's what we got here, and that's 50 years of service and counting in those days. We're talking about unsung heroes, distilleries, unsung heroes. Les is going to talk about a very unknown distillery, really, which is a wonderful distillery to enjoy the whiskey from. McGregor is one of those sort of unsung heroes in the industry because no one ever heard of him, but he's done an awful lot. But there's also somebody who I want to mention, which is John Black, and he was the distillery manager back in 2003 when it was reopened. And John Black is a true character and a true whiskey man through and through. And I will talk about that in a little while, but we're here to try some whiskey, and I've seen Les already nosing it. So what we'll do is we'll try the first one. As I said, it is the 28.52. It's the Southern Highlands as it's as it's placed. It's a source of fascination. It's the 28th distillery. It's the 52nd cask, which is a first fill ex-bourbon barrel. 224 bottles we got out of it, and 59.0% is the alcohol. It's 8 years old, and it's young and sprightly in the flavor profile. So without further ado, let's see. You already tried it? You already nosed it, Les?
I had a little sample early on, Olaf, and the first thing that struck me was the legs on this one. Beautiful long legs, just taking the time to come down the glass. Because of the flavour profile of this one, young and sprightly, I do tend to find they're quite lively, and it just needs a few minutes to breathe in the glass, or you can get quite a surprise in the nose, because all you're getting is the alcohol fumes.
Yeah. No, my first impression was extremely clean. I mean, very, very clean. A very clean spirit we've got here. Very fresh. Lots of coconut for me, sort of creamy custard cream's been mentioned as well, which I thought immediately.
I'm glad you said that, because Parma Violets was something that struck me. I got the coconut, a little bit of oakiness, and it might just be me, but slight menthol note on it.
Yeah, that is my freshness. Sort of that good evening, Stephen. So
the coconut is something that, and I like anything with coconut in it, and I tend to pick up that note quite readily in a lot of whiskies. Whether it's there or not, I don't know, but
well, it's quite common on a first fill barrel, isn't it? I mean, because you've got that American oak, you've got that fresh American oak, so the first time Scotch whiskey is using it. And to me, I'm sort of, when I first noticed it, because like you, I tried it before, sort of just obviously making my own notes, but I felt like it was just like a ray of warm sunshine, sort of like almost like this weekend when it was first time really pleasant. And it just makes me smile, sort of, it made me, it just felt like, yes, I'm looking forward to this, sort of, it's got that sort of a feel about it. Let's give it a try.
This is one for me, Olaf, where my brain and my nose didn't connect with the palate, because I got quite a surprise, because my brain was telling me to expect something a little bit different.
Yep.
But when I tasted it, I thought, wow, this is slight. I've got a slight stringency, chalkiness to it.
Yep.
I don't know if that's just me.
No.
But quite powerful in the palate and quite lively, as you would expect for this flavour profile.
Yep, I agree with you. I mean, in the tasting note, it says wasabi, which I think sort of hits it quite well. It's that sort of moment of, hang on, it's quite nice. It's quite sweet as well. But then all of a sudden, it's got that hit. Just like biting on a peppercorn or something,
Yeah.
So, oh, gee, this is hot. But then it's still got that juiciness, that fresh fruitiness to it, which...
Yeah, I got that coming right at the very end. Yep. I got everything else first, and then just the juiciness, as you say, coming through, and the fruitiness just starting to drift through the end of it there. But I say, the palate surprised me with nosing it. I don't know what I was expecting, but I wasn't expecting this, but it was in a pleasant way.
I think that's where the young and sprightly comes in as well. It's rather on the palate than on the nose.
Yeah. I was going to say that, because this one is what, 59%. Yeah. And when I was doing the tasting last week, we had some quite considerably high ABVs, and one or two of older ages. And I find the older age, even though it's a high ABV, you can sit and sip it quite comfortably, but the younger ones just do need a little bit of water to calm them down. Yeah. It's just like it reminds me of this flavour profile of a teenage boy. You've got to slap him to get him awake, and then he's buzzing. Yeah.
No, so I had the pleasure of actually meeting John Black in 2005. So basically just about a year ago when the distillery opened. And John Black was instrumental, because he was in the industry for 55 years, retired, and they got him out of retirement again, an Elgin boy, got him out of retirement, and he opened up the Tullybarton Distillery. And I walked with him around the distillery, a wonderful gentleman. Notes of interest is that it's an upward sloping line arm you've got. So basically what they want is encouraging reflux. So therefore want to get a much, much cleaner spirit. That's really what it is. It's a light spirit, slightly bready, I would say. A fruity yeastiness, sort of champagne yeastiness, I'm always calling it, and that creamy mouthfeel. You find also in the new make. And I have tried the new make then in 2005, and I got my notes out where I've written this all about and everything. But I not only tried that one, I also tried a 12-year-old out of a sherry cask, fully matured. I tried a 12-year-old bourbon cask, 6 months extra matured in a port pipe. I've also tried an 18-year-old bourbon hogshead. And while we're at it, John said, 5 months' time, there comes a 40-year-old out from 1964. Why don't you try this one, Olaf? So I tried the 1964, 40 years old, and we just had a wonderful time. And then he said, come into my office. So off I went into John's office, and he opened up a drawer, got a sample bottle out and said, try this. So I thought, what was this? Just unbelievable. Well, he said, what you're just drinking now is a 52-year-old. It was distilled in 1952. So 1952. Given that the distillery only existed in 1949. It's
very early. Yeah.
It's
a nice, friendly distillery. I don't know if you're aware, but I go there about 30. I've been there about 30 times in the last few years because on my tour of duty with the Royal Scotsman as Society Ambassador, this is one of the distilleries we go to. So I built up a great rapport with the team there. In fact, the visitor centre manager, she's from Germany, Sabina. So next time you're passing and it's open, go in and say hello to her.
Yeah.
But their core range now, because I know they've revamped the range over the years, but their core range now, everything starts in first fill bourbon.
Yeah.
And then they've got 2 or 3 different wine or cherry finishes. But it's a distillery that I've come to like over the last 3 or 4 years. Right. And nice, clean, fresh spirit.
Then I can ask you, is Gavin still there, the South African?
Gavin's still there. When I first started going there with the Royal Scotsman, they had Sabina managing the visitor centre, who's from Germany. Gavin, senior tour guide, was from South Africa.
Yeah.
Nick was the other tour guide who was English. And I'm thinking, haven't you got any Scots here? But they've got Ian and Jim, semi-retired guys who come in and do some of the tours now. And last year, probably the year before now, because we've lost a complete year, a young girl who is local and has lived in the village all her life. So she's got some good stories about the distillery playing there as a young kid. So a nice team there. And as I say, that it's as you said, it's quite an under the radar distillery. This, but once you get familiar with the spirit, and we've had some good casks through the society from this distillery.
Yeah, no, because I mean, Gavin was there in 2005 when I was there first time, so he was one of the early ones as well. And I find his enthusiasm, his passion, his knowledge, just fabulous. I'm glad to hear that he's still there, because I haven't been for a while, because when I did my homework, I realized they said now that the whole retail area is now a bottling hall and a cooperage. And I haven't seen that yet. I haven't been there.
Big changes. I don't know if you're into the water yet, Olaf.
No, actually, no. I'll add some water now. Yeah.
And this is where, for me, it makes a huge difference. And again, because it's young and sprightly, high ABV, I did learn to put maybe a little bit extra water in comparison to what I might normally do. But I'm just looking at the legs, and they're still just slowly trickling down there. And I'm getting this coconut again, Olaf.
Yes. Much more desiccated coconut maybe now. I mean, sort of that.
When I looked at the panel's tasting notes, I don't know if you sat on the panel for this particular.
I haven't.
Because it opens up with saying Chardonnay and Tarragon, and I'm saying Chardonnay. Where are they getting Chardonnay? And I tried it earlier before we came on screen tonight. Good evening, Ian. And I've got down with the water, lovely creamy vanilla wafers, which the panel got. Getting the coconut, as I said to you, and then all of a sudden, sparkling wine. I'm thinking, where did that come from? So I'm not saying it's Chardonnay, because Chardonnay is not a normal sparkling, but I all of a sudden I did get the connection with a light.
You see, that's sort of my champagne yeastiness as well. Sort of that sort of sparkling wine, champagne yeast. Sort of it's that sort of.
I've got the water balance just perfect now, and it's just sliding down my throat, nice and creamy, much lighter than initially at the high ABV.
Yeah, I think go on.
I'm not a regular highball drinker, but I was sitting analysing this earlier on. I thought this would be a nice dram for summer or a nice day in spring.
Yeah.
And I just wonder what it'd be like in a highball as a long drink with some soda, with that fizziness. And as I say, I've got sparkling wine as one of my descriptors. And that's what made me think, I wonder how this would work in a highball.
You see, we haven't planned that because you just saying that, it's almost like we sort of talked beforehand, but we didn't. But I was thinking as well, because I was in the weekend, I was sitting in the garden with my son and his girlfriend. We got a nice sort of sheltered area. The sun was coming out. We're feeling a little bit of the warmth. And because I like my beer, well, being a German, of course, I like my beer. And I like a beer. I like a beer and a whiskey, a half and a half as well. So what I poured is a lovely beer called Banks Caribbean Lager from Barbados.
Right. Oh, yes, I've heard that.
And then Barbadian rum, which is in our terminology in the society R6 and R3, if you're lucky enough to get any of those, because I got a lot of those R3s. So R3 and R6 are the Barbadian rums. And that went very well. But I could have easily swapped that rum with that one here, with that dram. Sort of just having a nice, by the way, I poured myself a beer. So that's the Banks Barbados beer.
I'd also just checked online before we came on stream tonight. I think there's 92 bottles left of this one from the outturn, and priced very, very reasonably as well at the entry level price for the society bottles.
No, and that was distilled in September 2000 and in May 2012. John Black actually sadly passed away in September 2013. So that was still under his sort of watchful eye, basically, what we're drinking here. And Dave, sorry, we can't say the name of the distillery, but we're giving you enough hints.
It is number 28, just in case you missed the start of it.
And I just want to finish with that one because there was a tribute to John Black from the distillery when he passed away, which and I just use a few sentences, not all of them because they're far too long. But born in 1942, John started his working life at Cardow, now Cardew. Well, that's another story we could talk about less, but we won't do that today. Distillery in 1958, and literally devoted the rest of his 55 years of life to the industry and making Scotch whiskey. John was as passionate about people as he was about distilling whiskey, and always had time for anyone who visited or called in for a chat. And I can certainly tell you that it wasn't just a chat. I think we were together 4 or 5 hours, the two of us, that day in January 2005. He left his legacy in the whiskies he distilled and memories and thoughts instilled in the people he met. And I think that's a wonderful way of remembering John. So I just say Slanjaba, John.
Well, he was obviously very well respected there, Olaf, because when you go through towards the warehouse with the big metal gates above it, it's got wheeshed John sleeping.
Yeah,
as you go into the warehouse as a nod to him.
So he was instrumental of getting that distillery back on its feet. I mean, sort of because only being open since 49, it had a very checkered history, even in that short period of time. And ever since then, it's gone from strength to strength, I feel.
Yeah, cracking place to visit. Lovely team and producing some really nice whiskey at the moment. And that one's no exception either. So I am going to try it in a highball at some point on a nice warm day. But moving on swiftly to dram number 2. Now I've got to tell anybody who's tuning in now, oh, by the way, good evening, Steve Fisher. Saw your name coming up there. You appear on the society events more than I do these days. Every time I'm there, you're logging in. So great to see you. And we do have a date penciled in provisionally for York coming up in the not too distant future. So hope to see you in person there. But the next whiskey we're going to visit is cask number 46, or distillery number 46, cask 105, called Feel the Peel. And this is the flavour profile of juicy oak and vanilla. sorry if I keep putting my head down, but because of costs, etc., we didn't get the whole bottle sent down so I could be reading off the label. So I've had to print off the tasting notes off the website. So Olaf and I are relying on a huge sample bottle to get us through here. So yeah, Field Appeal, 46,105, 8-year-old, 64.1%. So we're actually going up a little bit here. 8-year-old, second fill ex-bourbon barrel this time. As I said, juicy oak and vanilla, and one of only 253 bottles. And again, just before we came online tonight, there was 58 bottles left at this. And again, a very, very affordable one. We'll go into the dram, and then once we're exploring that, I know you folks at home perhaps may not have this bottle yet, but hopefully you will have a dram in front of you so you can carry on drinking and imbibing with us. This one, and again, you sit in the panel much more times than I do, Olaf. You're very regular, but there are some aromas that keep coming back to you, and I can't describe where it comes from. Well, I do know where it comes from my childhood. Yes. I'm thinking, why am I keep coming back to this one? But you do tend to sort of do that because it's in there from years and years ago. And when I put my nose in the glass for this one initially, I was getting Oddfellow sweets. Now, unless you're a certain age, if you're under 30, you've probably never heard of Oddfellow sweets. It was at my childhood. The closest I can get to the aromas, not necessarily the textures, would be Edinburgh Rock. But if you ever come across, if you find an old-fashioned sweet shop and you can get Oddfellow sweets, give it a go. Good evening, Kevin. So that's what I was getting. A little bit buttery. Okay, a little bit.
That's interesting, because you're saying talking about childhood memories, because that's very often what it is. And of course, my childhood memories, having been brought up in Germany, are very different. So I get all these sweets and everything. And the one I always love still, because I'm a chairperson of the panel, so when I'll listen in what the people are saying, Oddfellows I already found, but the one thing I've never found are Spangles.
No, yeah, that's one that comes up for me time and time again as well.
And, I never found them anywhere. Yeah. So whenever someone says Spangles, I just look up and smile and I say, "I'll believe you." I mean,
you make me feel very nostalgic now, Olaf. But the other thing I got in this, and it was hidden at the back of the aroma here, is a little bit buttery, stroke oily. And when I go on to tell you a little bit about the distillery, and this is maybe where my brain is getting this connection from, part of the production process gives a little bit oiliness to new make spirit in this one.
But it's a lovely soft sweetness as well, isn't it? I mean, on the nose. I mean, again, if you would give me that and just sort of say nose it and tell me how much alcohol, I would never say 64.8.
No, I haven't put water in that yet. I've taken my mouthful.
Just nosing it. Just nosing it. There's no nose prickle. Yeah. Nothing at all. It's just.
But even as a palate, it's still boldish because of its young age. Dry initially, then the sweetness starts to come through, the juiciness, and I was getting recollections of strawberry fondant. Now, my mind immediately went to the tasting we did last Thursday night. We were pairing the whiskies with food, and I had white chocolate filled with strawberry fondant.
Yeah.
And I thought, this will go wonderfully well. And it's amazing how you think something's going to go. So I still had some left from Thursday. Yeah. Tried the dram, strawberry fondant, tried the dram. And I thought that just doesn't go at all. But again, my palate was telling me this should go tremendously well, but it didn't. But that's part of the fun of trying different pairings, food pairings with the whiskey, so you get it right. But the juiciness, dry initially on the palate, then the juiciness starts to come through.
Lovely fragrant spice as well. I mean, sort of, it's got that. It's not spicy like the one we had before with the wasabi.
Yeah.
Much more sort of fragrance, floral. It's fascinating. That's what I always tell people. It's not a numbers game. It's not because it's 64. it needs more water than the one which is 50, because
Yes.
everything's different. Everyone's different.
Yeah, this is higher ABV and more or less the same year as the last one, but easier to take neat.
I think much easier on the palate. Neat.
So I've added a little bit of water now. I'm still getting the vanilla, creamy, getting soft fruits coming through there, so it's quite fruity in the nose this time. Still quite, still quite lively though. I might put another couple of drops of water in there. Only on the nose, and the palate should be fine. Oh yes, juiciness definitely there. Again, I'm getting berries, soft fruits. You might be getting something completely different, and that's the beauty of how we have a panel, because we'll all pick up different traits and different whiskies. For me, this spice, because the panel starts saying a soft sweetness, evoke memories of frosted cupcakes. On the palate, we discovered fruitiness, which we're getting. They go on to say creamy vanilla with water, strawberry laces. So I did get the strawberries in there. And almost at the end, say spicy notes now becoming more forward in the palate. And I must admit, the spiciness for me came on the finish. I hadn't really picked it up that much until I concentrated on the finish. And as it was trickling down, I thought, I'm getting that bold spiciness now.
I think the spiciness is more there with water rather than without water. And I've just seen a question from Kevin. Yes, they are all cask strength whiskies we're having. Rolf is naughty, so therefore their all cask strength is quite interesting, because this one at 64.1% certainly would have not been put into the cask at the barrel strength, which is usually 63.5, unless that barrel would have been matured in Barbados in the Caribbean, because then the alcohol goes up over the years because more water evaporates than alcohol. But if it hasn't, which I don't think it has, then it would have gone in most likely on the spirit strength, i.e. the cut strength, which would have been probably closer to 70% alcohol, 68, 69, because then over 8 years' time, that's what you're losing, and you're ending up at 64%. Yeah,
occasionally these things kind of throw you. And I know very early in my career, I came across a Port Charlotte, the Society bottled a young one, and it was 66%, and I'm thinking, this is impossible, because they fill it at 63.5. As it happened, a couple of weeks after there, I was at the distillery in Islay, and I had a chat with Duncan McGilvery, and he explained that because they don't trade their whiskey, they can fill it to any strength they want. So that answered that question. But everything I'd read and been told up to then was 63.5, 60. But every now and again, like this one, where you come across an anomaly. In terms of the distillery itself, this is a Speyside distillery, which is situated just about 3-4 miles south of Elgin, where I spent most of my misspent youth. Too young to enjoy what was going on around me, but I've made up for it since then. It's a very old whiskey. It was actually the distillery was actually established in 1876. But you walk in, unless it's a specialised whiskey bar, if you walk into a bar, you're very unlikely to find a bottle from this distillery behind the bar. And it would only be specialist whiskey retailers or a specialist whiskey bar that you could possibly find it. We're very fortunate society. I mean, this is cask 105, so we do get quite a supply from this distillery. It's one of these hidden gems, and which is when in, a bit like most of the distilleries, when you look back in their history, built for blending, and it was regarded as top class. And the blend that went into was, still goes into, is Hague's Gold is the predominant blend, but it's owned by Diageo, so I'm sure I'll go into more blends than that. I don't know if you've been up to this site, Olaf, just south of Elgin. The guy who founded this distillery, along with 2 or 3 other businessmen, led a very interesting life, John Duff, and he went on. He was a manager at Glendronach Distillery before that. He went on to found Longmore and Benriach, which effectively only about a mile or 2 away from this distillery. So he was quite busy in this area. Shares the same site with Manic Moor. And the first time we went there's no visitor centre, so you can't go around it, but we went out just to have a look round, my wife and I, when we were up in Speyside. And driving around it, it amazed me, the size of the actual site of the distillery. Warehouse after warehouse after warehouse, and they've got capacity to store 250,000 casks, not just from this distillery and its sister distillery, Manickmore, but from a lot of the other Diageo distilleries in the Speyside area. So I do a lot of maturation here. But in the production, because we're very good at talking about the casks, which is so important to get a lot of the flavour, all the colour and the aromas from. But in the production process, there's little things there which starts to help develop the style of the new make spirit here. And at this distillery, they have, I don't know if you're aware of this, but they have purifiers attached to the stills. So rather than going straight over the line arm and into the condensers, they go through these purifiers, and that creates more reflux. So it goes back into the still again. So you're getting this lighter style. Yeah, and Glen Grant have that. Glen Grant were the first distillery, and it's only about 6-7 miles from this one. So, but that makes a difference. That, and they have a long fermentation time here, from 60 to 106 hours. So you're going to build up these fruity esters, which is coming through in the, but also these the purifiers, they say it creates a little bit of oiliness. And again, when I said earlier on, I'm getting oiliness, and I'm not sure if that's my brain saying you've read that, so that's what you're getting, or am I actually getting it?
Yeah, Grant, you're absolutely right. That was one of the big advertising campaigns in the USA. Don't be vague, ask for Haig. That was a big. That was a
somebody else has come with it as well.
Yeah, no, that's
a nice, easy drinking style whiskey. Yeah. I've had an occasional society cask here, which has been matured in sherry, that works particularly well with this spirit as well. But this is a second fill, so slightly less influence from the wood, but still the flavour profile spot on, juicy oak and vanilla, with that little spiciness at the tail end of it there. Lovely, creamy. I would try that. I will try this, as I think it would work well as a pleasant aperitif. If you're just going to sit down to a meal, you just want to tantalise your taste buds and get the juices flowing for the food that's coming, I think this would work quite well as an aperitif.
You see, that's quite interesting, because in the Wild Garden menu, which is the home dining experience we currently have on with James Freeman, our executive head chef, he's got that one, the one you just introduced, the 46105, matched with apple frangipane cake with elderflower cream.
All right.
In the dessert, I mean, sort of as the dessert dram. So I certainly would be very much looking forward to that match. I mean, sort of in terms of it, it's so that's at the moment the Wild Garden menu, which still runs. I think it's running this weekend, and then it changes to another menu.
I'm just adding 2 or 3 more drops of water, because as this develops in the glass, it does get bold.
I probably must say I probably prefer that one neat less, to be perfectly honest.
I know what you mean. Yeah, you're getting more in terms of flavour with the water, but neater. It just had something about it, didn't it?
It just had that intensity, which was a nice intensity without the water, which is weird, because, as I say, 64.1%. In particular, I'm always someone who loves to add water, and I still get teased in the panel that I'm adding far too much water, to my whiskies, and I should know by now, because I don't like burn. I don't like alcohol burn. I love the flavors and the aromas, but somehow this one, I think I would be quite happy enjoying it without water.
I think you could take little sips and just
that's it.
Let it go for a long time. Let it last for an hour or so, possibly. If you're pouring yourself a decent dram. But that's the third time I've added water to it. It gets really bolder. The more water, the longer it sits in the glass, the water opens it up. But 2 very different whiskies, but very nice.
Yeah.
And it's nice to spend an evening away from the television, and having a dram or two and sharing some company with you, Olaf.
That's always a pleasure with you, Les.
So if any of the members haven't sampled anything from either of these two distilleries, as we said, as Olaf said about his introduction to 28, it's a relatively unknown one. So is this one. And they're well worth exploring. And the juicy oak and vanilla is, I must admit, it's a flavour profile that I do enjoy in the right occasion. And whiskies like that depends the mood you're in and where you are and who you're with as to what style of whiskey. But juicy oak and vanilla does it for me quite frequently.
Yep. Good. Well, Les, I hope in 5 minutes' time we're not going to sit here still together and talking over the screen. Rather be together and share a dram in person. Well,
hopefully sooner rather than later, the way the vaccination program's going here in the UK. But Mr. Steve Fisher, watch this space. We are coming to York. We'll be seeing you soon. And hopefully around the rest of the country in the second half of the year once things hopefully get back to normal.
There is no flavour without alcohol. Well, there we go.
Somebody knows you well, though.
On that note, Slangevar.
Cheers, Olaf.
All the best.
Slangevar. All the best. Hope to see you in person sooner rather than later.